Okay, so the next step is that we want to change this into a bit more of a traditional firing mechanic where holding the button in will automatically fire, a bit like an AR or something in popular shooting games. So yeah, we don't want the spam that we've currently got. This really rewards people who can mash the button faster or that just have a better bit of kit because you'll get squeeze more bullets out, won't you? So let's change it a bit. I've neatened this up a bit because we're going to move this around quite a lot. I'm just going to start by disconnecting it though. And I'm sure already with what you know of Blueprint, you've got a few ideas rattling around in your head about how you can tackle this. You might be thinking of using a timeline, something like that. By all means, experiment with it, give it a go. I'm just going to start with a really basic approach using a variable. So what we can do when we press and release the fire buttons is actually store a boolean that just remembers if we're firing or not, and then use an event tick to spawn those projectiles. So let's have a quick look at that. Just pop in a new variable. Let's call it something like isFiring. And straight away hold Alt and drag a reference in here and another one. So we're going to have two different ways to set it. When we press fire, we're going to turn it on, and when we release fire, we're going to turn it off. So we're going to have that unchecked, and that will do the job now. We have a variable that remembers whether or not we are firing. And then down here, I'll just bring it slightly back up, we can have an event tick. So I'm just going to move it to the right a bit because we are going to need a branch as well. So if we just make an event tick and then drag straight into a branch. So let's get a reference here. If I hold Control to bring in just a reference to our variable, we can branch with it. So execution in there, and if we are firing, if it's true, we want to spawn a projectile. And if you're thinking ahead, you can probably see that this might turn into carnage, but let's have a look anyway. So the logic is, while we're holding the key, spawn a projectile every frame. Hit play, and we can see we're not firing straight away, which is good. And then when I hold, we get this jet stream. We've got a bit of like a water gun rather than an actual gun. But I'm pretty sure that's spawning lots of bullets, so we can be fairly confident something is working. And then you might use what you already know to come along and just maybe add a delay. So we could move this over here, and we could drag off here and just make a delay, couldn't we? If we have just that default delay of 0.2 seconds, the logic otherwise is pretty sound. It's not the most technically impressive way of doing something, but your player's never going to see that, are they? So if the idea of using functions and events that we will have covered in the lecture, if they're getting a bit above your head for now, start with this one and then you can tweak it later, but that does a job, doesn't it? We do eventually need to come back and make these targets move. Yeah, so just for the sake of catching my breath, I'm going to have a few cuts in this video, but we're going to jump into a new way of doing it now. Method number 2 is going to revolve around using an event. So we're going to make a new event that is purely designed to just spawn one projectile. So that's pretty easy to sort from what we've got here. So I'm just going to delete the delay in the branch. We actually don't need this variable anymore either, so let's get rid of any mention of it. And then drag this over, and instead of having an event tick, I'm going to make a custom event. So custom event, and just call it fire. And this fire event lives purely to spawn in a projectile. Okay, so now what we can do is make a timer. So we've not covered these before, but we can use a timer that just triggers this event regularly. So we can drag from pressed here and just search for timer, and we actually want to set a timer by event, and it's actually the one that's highlighted there. So set timer by event will give us a few options. One of them is the time, so how often. Let's just go with the delay time that we had before of 0.2 seconds, and I do want this to loop as well. So you've got options to not have looping timers if there's ever a need arises where you just want to time something one time. But we need to link these events up. So we've got this node here, sorry, this connection where we can just wire up the event into our custom made event, and now every 0.2 seconds when we are holding fire, we will summon this or trigger this custom event. So let's just compile that, save it, give it a go. You can see straight away I'm not firing, and then when I click I am firing, but we've got an issue now where if I let go of the mouse I'm still firing, so we need to come back to it and undo this timer when we release. So when we release, you might have dragged off before, you might be ahead of me and think, I've got this. I can search for timer again and find the opposite of set. And you've got a couple of options. You've got pause, but we're actually just going to, in this case, I'm going to clear it. So I'm going to clear and invalidate a timer. And this doesn't actually link to the event. What it links to is the handle that was generated when we started the timer up here. So I'm just going to grab this value and I'm going to plug it in there. And that will just do the opposite of this. So when we press, we're going to start this timer with this event, and when we release, it's going to use the handle that function generated to just stop that timer. Compile it all, save it, try it out. And now when we let go, we stop firing. There you have it. So that's how you can do a slight rapid fire with a timer that's based on events. But I'll just do another little quick cut and we'll do it with something slightly different as well. Okay, so the third and final option for this particular video is to get rid of this event, because this is quite nice in terms of like the speed of it. We've put that together with quite a few, like very few nodes. But it's a bit messy. Like we're going to have one last look. We're going to use a function that will just neaten this up a bit. So let's get rid of our custom event. We're not going to be setting a timer by event, but we still need the input and we still need the base of our spawn, don't we? Whoops. So these three things can still live together. But what we're actually going to do is sort of move them out of this main event graph or condense them down into what's known as a function. So a function is a set of instructions that do one job normally, hopefully, do one job quite well. So I'm going to turn these into a function. There's a few ways of doing it. We can come over to my blueprint here and we could actually add a function. So we could hit plus, and then you can see that straight away this pops us into a new tab, and we could make a fire function. And then we could, cut and paste our stuff in. Or if I just delete that, it can't be empty. Let's delete the function. I don't want it. Go away. Let's just compile it and then delete it. There we go. Or I could select them, right click, and I can collapse these to a function. And you see that's generated a function and it's made like a node call to it as well. So that's quite handy. If I just compile it, hopefully it'll let me rename it quickly as well. There we go. Let's call that fire. So that's amounted to the same thing, but it's saved us needing to awkwardly cut and paste between them. So if I double click, it will open that tab. And we've got this fire function. So this is where the function starts. We come in and we've got the logic that we've been using all along. And yeah, that's okay. So this will just do its job. And now we can use this function. We don't actually need a reference to it there. We can use a set timer by function now. So if we drag off pressed and do set timer by function name, just put the name of our function in there, which is fire. Make sure we've got our time set properly, so 0.2 again. And let's set it to loop. And then when we release, we want to clear timer by function name. So this makes for a much neater event graph. So how neat is that? Just 3 nodes. If we compile it, so what it's doing is it will start a timer here that will trigger a function, and our function is sort of squirreled away over here with those 3 nodes that we've been using all along. that just spawn that projectile. So it's quite nice, it's neat, and it's really reusable as well. We can use this fire function in other places in our event graph. If we ever decide to add some extra features that cause us to fire under other circumstances, then it's really easy to reuse that function. But let's just make sure it does actually work. And it does. So in terms of rapid fire, there are other ways you can do it still, and there are tweaks you can make to these particular methods, but you've got three options there. So have a little bit of a play with them.